Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I got a story sent to me by a few people, including Kevin. Thank you very much, from Fox 2 out of Detroit. And I know some reporters at Fox 2. Jessica Dupneck wrote this one. Detroit woman booted from Zoom court hearing after making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich during a call with the court. And if you watch YouTube, they've got a lot of these Zoom hearings on YouTube because the stuff's available. People download it, they go through and they look for certain types of cases. And somebody thought this case was interesting and they posted it. And of course, a lot of people don't quite grasp the idea that if you're in court in person, that's one thing. If you're on a Zoom call but in court, you actually need to behave exactly as if you were in court. And a lot of people don't get that. And I understand how it can happen like this, but we'll get there. But I've also got a really funny story to tell you at the end that I've never told on this channel before. A Zoom court hearing went off the rails after a mom in Detroit made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich during the Zoom call. The sandwich was on full display during the hearing, and the judge was not happy about the display in a Zoom courtroom. So the mom was making the sandwich, and she was on a Zoom call with the 36th District Court, which is a district court for Detroit. And she was in front of the judge, Sean Perkins. Sean Perkins is a famous judge in Michigan because so many people watch his Zoom calls and post them on YouTube that he's probably one of the 3 judges from Michigan that people will recognize. Sean Perkins. I like him a lot. I think he's good. He's a no-nonsense judge, and I've seen him before talking to somebody on a Zoom call and say, "Excuse me, take off your hat." So if you're in a courtroom, you take off your hat, unless it's a religious head covering, but that's a different story altogether. So now the mom discovered that her video was posted on Instagram, but I think it's now been posted elsewhere. And she said, "It was just a lot going on. I was having a mommy day. I click on the video and I see the judge that I had and I see my robe and some peanut butter and I say, oh my God." And yes, she was wearing a robe. Now, not the same kind of robe the judge was wearing. Now, the mom had a 3-year-old daughter who was sick at that time. And so she was very concerned about her daughter. And by the way, I don't blame her for being concerned about her daughter. And so the judge then booted her from the Zoom call. She was being called to court for allegedly having an open alcohol container as a passenger in a car, okay? So the hearings of the 36th District Court are streamed live on YouTube, which opens up courtrooms like live theaters to the masses. It's not even COVID anymore. What are we doing here? Let's put court back in the courtrooms, she said. I do feel like I owe the judge an apology. I could have come better prepared. I could have handled it a lot better. She said she waited for hours in the Zoom waiting room and feels like the judge could have had some mercy on a single mom. And I've read several articles here, and at one point, apparently, and I've done Zoom court hearings, and you log in and you're sitting there, and then they call your case, and that now suddenly you're the show. And the judge asked her, "Is that a sandwich you're making?" And it was. And then he said, "And by the way, also, you're not dressed appropriately. Is that a robe you're wearing?" She's wearing a robe. And the weird part is that I've gone to many Zoom hearings, of course, and I wear a suit and a tie. And you have to understand that, yes, it's true that we did this during COVID as a workaround, but now that COVID is over, they could go back to full in-person, the full Monty court. But they realized how much easier it is for everyone, including the litigants. So if you get called to court and you got to go to downtown Detroit for 36th District Court and pay exorbitant parking fees and go through the same level of check that you go through at the airport for TSA, and then go find your courtroom and then mill around in the hallway for an hour until the courtroom opens, then go into the courtroom and check in and then sit there for another hour and a half, wouldn't you rather do a Zoom call? I would. And so the funny part is I know some attorneys who have told me that they put on a jacket and a shirt and a tie and they just don't ever stand up to, indicate they're wearing shorts. And you can get away with that. But the point is they do the jacket, the tie, and the shirt, obviously. And so we've heard the stories and I've done the videos about, for instance, people zooming in while sitting in their cars, while they're driving their cars, for a hearing being held because they were driving without a license, that kind of thing. And so there have been all kinds of variations on this. This isn't the crime of the century, the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I believe she then later came back with no sandwich and presumably dressed a little better and took care of her case. But Sean Perkins, if you go watch a bunch of his videos, and he's not posting them, other people are, but he watched the videos he's in. He's just a very good judge, very smart, very quick, and he's just down to business, you know. And you learn to appreciate judges like that, because if there are 30 cases on the docket and you're 29th, you want the 28 ahead of you to go fast. You want that judge to be efficient. So I'm going to let you know, and I don't know why, but this reminded me of an incident. I taught law school as an adjunct professor at the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law in downtown Detroit. 10 years. Taught consumer protection, trial practice, and pretrial practice. Three different cases, or three different topics. And one day, a woman was in my class, came in, and she had a little girl with her, and she goes, Professor, and people actually called me that. She goes, I couldn't find a sitter for my daughter. My sitter's got an emergency. Is it okay if my daughter sits through class? And I said, yeah. And now I was familiar with the student, and I'd had her before, and she struck me as somebody who had their act together. So I said, sure. In the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, let's see how this goes. And so the mom goes, and I still vividly remember this. She goes in the room, and she sits in the far back corner, but one seat over, and her daughter sits in the corner next to her, and they pull out some, I believe they're coloring books. But she pulls out some books and things to occupy the daughter. And other students file in. Nobody says anything. And the kid sits quietly, fully occupied during the entire class, and I forgot the kid was there. Okay? So I have no problem with that at all. Zero. And so as she was walking out, she goes, was that okay? And I said, yes. And I said, and quite frankly, it's up to you, but you don't need to ask in the future. If you have a problem with a sitter, whatever you want, that's fine. Absolutely fine. Why would I care? And so it turns out, I think she fired the babysitter. So I feel bad if I disemployed a babysitter, but she would bring the kid to class. And what's funny is I never heard another student say anything negative about it, but I remember a couple students were sitting in that corner, turning around and talking to the little kid and talking to the mom, and hey, what are you coloring? Oh, is that a dinosaur? You know? And I remember towards the end of the semester, a couple of days where I almost called on the kid because the kid's in class and I'm calling on people. I'm about to go, excuse me, ma'am, tell me about UCC Section 2, 314. What does it say? I didn't. But the interesting thing is I completely understand the woman's predicament. Completely understand it. But unfortunately, from the judge's viewpoint, the judge is thinking, hey, I could make people come in here live, and they can't come in wearing a robe, and they can't make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich here. And if the daughter is sick, unfortunately, the mom would have to find a sitter or something. And so the judge is looking at it like, hey, look, we've already made a bunch of accommodations for you to do this from home. Can't you just focus on the courtroom for just a few minutes? And so it made the national news. It did. And I see the equities on both sides. I do. But it reminded me of the story. And I forgot the girl's name. I forgot her name. I feel bad about that, but that was a few years ago. But I do remember that, and this reminded me of that, where I've seen children in public who are so misbehaved that I would have had to say, if it happened in my classroom, excuse me, ma'am, I'm really sorry, but you and your daughter got to go. Because I'm not going to sacrifice the education of these other law students for an unruly child. But the child I saw was one of the best behaved children I've ever seen of that age. I'm guessing 7, 8 years old. ballpark, right around there. So crazy story. But Kevin, thanks for sending it. Detroit Fox 2 reported it. Jessica Dupneck wrote it. Detroit woman booted from Zoom court hearing after making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich during a call. Sean Perkins was having none of it. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. The journey is the reward.